Parashat Emor begins, Emor al Kohanim b'nei Aaron, speak to Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, V'amarta le'am l'nefesh ol yitam v'yamav. That basically, Parashat Emor introduces the halacha of Tumas Kohanim, as it's known, that there's a special privilege and responsibility of being a Kohen. The privileges are getting the first aliyah, getting the cover for benching, Birkas Kohanim, and comes the responsibility of not coming in contact with the dead, not going to a cemetery. So, as a general rule, except for the 7 relatives, a Kohen cannot mitame and cannot defile himself for a mace. There's an interesting halacha brought down. The Torah tells us that the Gemara learns out from the Torah, Emor Kohanim b'nei Aaron, that speak to the Kohanim, the children, the sons of Aaron, to learn out the halacha only applies to the men and not the women, to the sons and not the daughters. To the daughter of a Kohen does not have the prohibition of Tumas Kohanim, and a daughter of a Kohen can come in contact with the dead, can come into a cemetery. So that's the halacha that's black and white. The halacha only applies to men and not to women. So there's a famous question in the commentators, what about the wife of a Kohen who became pregnant? So a Kohen's married to a woman, and the woman becomes pregnant now. So the question is, can the pregnant woman go to the cemetery? What's the issue? Like we just said, it applies to men and not to women. So why should it? So why would I think a pregnant woman cannot come to the cemetery? So the shaila is because maybe she's pregnant with a male fetus, and therefore there's a male inside, and then maybe outside she could go to the cemetery, but not to mitame her future son, so then it's prohibited. So that's the shaila in the Achronim. So the Rokeach is one of the first ones to deal with the issue, and the Rokeach is a classic case. I'm often asked, does Jewish law change? So I say it depends what you mean by Jewish law changing. If you mean changing, that if you ask me the same question today, you asked me 300 years ago, then yes, halacha could change, I might give you a different answer. But if you ask me if the principles given to Moshe Rabbeinu Har Sinai, they never change. So this is a classic example, or perhaps will be a classic example. So the leniency of the Rokeach is based on the principle of sveka, of double doubt. So in other words, we have a principle in the Gemara, a doubt regarding a biblical law was strict on, safek da'oraisa l'chumra. We have a principle, safek d'rabbanan l'ku, a doubt regarding a rabbinic law we're lenient on. And we have a third principle, a double doubt, a svek as it's known. So even on a biblical law, we could be lenient. So we have one doubt we're strict, a doubt on a biblical law we're strict, a doubt on a rabbinic law we're lenient, and a double doubt, even on a biblical law we're lenient. So it comes along the Rokeach and says we have a svek here. One suffix is maybe it's a boy, maybe it's a girl. And even if you're going to tell me it's a boy, maybe the fetus will make it to fruition, maybe there'll be a miscarriage, or the child won't be born. So it's a double doubt on whether the male child is actually going to come out alive, because maybe it's still a nephil, it's a potential nephil, not a viable child, and therefore, based on the double doubt, the Rokeach was lenient. That's what many posts can bring down, based on sveka, one could be lenient. However, the question is, what about today? With modern technology, we have the sonogram. That's the test the woman takes to find out the sex of the child, male or female. So the question, so it's actually, so one question is a woman obligated to take the test? If she wants to go to a cemetery or come in contact with the dead, would a woman be mechuyev to take the sonogram? And secondly, assuming she does take it and she finds out that it's a male inside, would that change the equation? So there's a famous Jew from the Nod of Yehuda who writes, not everyone agrees to it, but the Nod of Yehuda writes that the only time you have to mevarer a svek sveika, the only time you have to clarify a double doubt, let's say you could find out. What do you mean double doubt? If you could find out the facts, so then what do you mean no double doubt? Go do your homework and figure it out. So you're right, it's only if you could figure out both doubts. But if you only could know one doubt, so then you're not obligated even to figure out the first doubt. It's the whole discussion about the wings of the animal, etc. So since over here the sonogram could determine whether it's a boy or a girl, but apparently I guess it can't determine whether it's going to be a nafil or not, whether it's going to be a viable vlad. So therefore, since you only could clarify one of the two sveikas, so therefore you're not obligated. So you wouldn't be obligated to take a sonogram. But let's say someone took a sonogram, they're doing it for health reasons, and then they find out the sex of the baby. Would they be permitted to go in? Again, so assuming that sonograms al pi halacha are considered reliable and we accept the halacha, so would this change the equation? Because what do we say? According to the Rokeach, the whole basis for leniency here is because it's a double doubt. But now that perhaps we got rid of one of the doubts, we know it's a boy. The only doubt whether it's going to be a nafo or not a nafo, so therefore we'd go back to our original principle, and therefore Tumas Kohanim is a biblical law, and therefore it's one doubt regarding a biblical law, Sabek Daraisul Chumrah, it would come out that perhaps according to the Rokeach today, a wife of a pregnant woman, the wife of a Kohen, would not be permitted to go into a cemetery. That's what some suggest. Others suggest it's a totally different leniency. It's not based on the fact of sex veka. We have the halacha of tuma belua. It's a concept where the fetus, the womb, shields the fetus of the child. In other words, that the mother is protecting the child, so the tuma can't get in because it's enclosed, and therefore there's no problem anyway. So according to that approach, sonograms will make a difference, even if you know it's a male inside, but the tumor doesn't get in there. And the third approach is there's a discussion in the Gemara Yevamos in terms of whether at what point does the father-son relationship begin? Does it begin at conception or begin at birth? So again, a discussion, but based on the Gemara and Yevamos, that referred to a fetus as a zar, so according to Emor, that the concept of the son becoming a Kohen, that only begins at birth. But before the birth, there's no concept of being a Kohen. The father-son relation doesn't begin until birth. So that's the case. So even if we know it's a boy, but so what? The din of a Kohen doesn't begin until the baby's born. So those are the three basic leniencies people have, either based on the Rokeach Svek Sveka, that might be in doubt now because of the sonogram, Tuma Belua, about that the woman's protecting the fetus, the tumor can't get in, or thirdly, that the fetus doesn't have the status of a Kohen. The fetus doesn't get a status of a Kohen until the birth. However, there are many other achronim. Rav Shechter, one of them, I think Rabbi also, Machber, and they say they don't find any of these kulas compelling. Rav Shechter quotes from many achronim, and a lot of shtickles, and by the Rosh Yeshivas on this, about that even that we assume that as long as there's no tumas meis, this, in other words, the question is the isser of tumas, is the isser in coming, is the prohibition of coming in contact with the dead because the Kohen is going to become tameh? So therefore, if you give me a heicha timsa, where a Kohen could come in contact with the dead and not become tameh, then it'd be permitted. Or as Rav Shachta quotes so many achronim, and the way he thinks is that no, there's a separate issue. There's an issue tumas meis, issue to come in contact with the dead, even if you don't become tameh. And therefore, even in the case where the fetus wouldn't become tameh, because whatever the reason is, on svek sveka, or because tuma belua, or because he's not a, he's not a Kohen yet. Well, if he's not a Kohen yet, I guess it shouldn't be an issue. But let's say you have a tuba, even in case, according to the second leniency, that even if you don't become tameh, there's still an isser. So that's a major discussion today among the contemporary poskim on whether a pregnant wife of a Kohen, can she enter a cemetery? Number one is, if she finds that it's a male, she did a sonogram, and she finds out a male, can she go? That's one question. And then also, if she didn't find out, would she be obligated to find out to see if it's a male or female? And lastly, to conclude, halacha l'maisa, it's still a difference, because if you assume a wife of a Kohen can't go, al pi halacha, there's nothing to talk about. She can't go into a cemetery. However, if you lenient and say she can, so really the minhag Yisrael is anyway a pregnant woman, of whether she's married to a Kohen, Levi, or Yisrael, the minhag Yisrael is for a pregnant woman not to go to a cemetery. Different reason, because she's the ultimate, she represents life, she's her life, the fetus's life, and the cemetery represents the avi avos hatuma. A dead person represents the highest level of tuma. So therefore, the minhag is for women not to go.